Yeah, what does language have a lot of weight in, Thano?
Language has a lot of weight in keeping your marriage healthy,
Damn.
which mine is.
Okay.
But I feel like it would. I feel like language would have a lot of weight in that.
Oh, I was talking about the MPAA rating system because we're talking about Jojo Rabbit.
Oh, we are. I also think like if you tell your wife like make me some breakfast, right? That's not that's not going to be well. But if you tell her, "Oh, make me some breakfast," then at least you begin with a laugh. So that,
God damn.
so-
I'll keep that in.
yep.
I'll keep that in.
Yep.
Fuck it. Yeah, so we're talking about Jojo Rabbit.
Yeah. In other news, we're talking about bigots today.
We're talking about bigots. Boy, oh boy, does this movie, like, I was watching this movie last night in preparation for us talking about it today. And holy shit, man. This movie, I feel like in 2024 hits even harder
than it did back then.
than 2025. Hits even harder than it did back in 2019.
Let me just pause right here, not the recording, but just pause the conversation to say that you don't strike me as a man who writes checks or fills out deposit slips at the bank. But when you do, you'll write 2024. I see it. Last year,
I can see it. I can see it happening all the time.
last year I had to go to the bank in like January, and I immediately wrote 2025, and I felt so good with myself. But anyway,
I feel like in my brain, it doesn't feel like 2025, or it doesn't feel like the new year until I'm back in school.
yeah, that's true.
So I feel like last year, my first day back in school, I wrote 2025, no problem.
yeah,
And that you're right, it does feel pretty good.
yeah,
But I wonder if I can keep that up on Monday.
that's a great
It's a
question.
great question.
Now, I will say, as to this movie hitting harder in 2025 than it did in 2019, I think that's a good question. I'd love to talk about how
This movie would not. This movie would not fly in 2025.
you don't think it would
I feel like this
if it
movie,
came out. If it came out,
if it came out this year, if
Yeah.
they said Taika Waititi has a brand new movie coming out in 2025, it's a satire on Nazi Germany, and he's gonna play Hitler.
yeah,
I feel like the Chuts would be like, how can you disrespect Hitler like this?
that, and I feel like our team has kind of waved the white flag a little bit,
Oh, 1,000%.
but we'll get there.
Yeah, we'll get
We'll
there.
get there. This is one of my top 5 of all time. I think.
Really?
I think so.
Man, I
Because
can see it. I can
yeah.
see the argument for it. It's not in my top 5 personal,
Right.
but I think if I were to expand maybe to like a top 10, I think this could squeak in.
Ooh, nice.
It's a feel good movie that's not afraid to hit those like heavy themes
So
and make it hurt.
this is part of our nameless series of
We need a we need a name for this.
basically we'll call this the content grab, because what this basically is once again me being like, I wish I could review this shit. So we found a way to do it. But like we just recorded How to Train Your Dragon.
Mm-hmm.
Numerous times in that How to Train Your Dragon episode, we came to the realization that these two movies
It's the same movie.
are basically the same.
Mhm.
It's part of our series where Javi and I recommend films to each other. Javi recommended How to Train Your Dragon to me. I recommended this to Javi. The rules are a bit convoluted in terms of we have both seen these movies
In the first year.
in the first year. We both know that we like them. Now going forward, the criteria for the movies are a little bit different.
Yes.
But it was nice to start on this note. I will say, if you look at my list of movies I'm recommending, it's all about pathos and more pathos.
And also wasting 15 hours of my time.
You know what? 15 hours of your time that I wasted are not as much of a waste as the 6 hours of my life
Amazing.
that you'll have wasted.
Your working title for this is Rex I Love.
Rex I Love. Yeah, let's keep Rex I Love.
It's not a bad
Yeah,
title.
it's heartwarming like this movie is. What better way to understand World War II than through the eyes of a child?
Yeah, it's a choice. And I do have thoughts about it.
That choice.
About the choice. Because I feel like for this movie to work the way it does, you do need a child to be the one who's being propaganda to.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
Because I feel like if you had made this about an adult who is so ingrained, then you're like, fuck, this just hits too close to home.
First of all, it's an adorable child. What was
Dude,
his
he's
name?
kind of a shit.
I'm sure he is.
He's
but, like,
he's such a little shit for like the first half of this movie.
Yeah, but like he has an adorable face. A, B,
Eh.
I'm a firm believer that there's a distinction between like cute, cute, and ugly, right?
Cute, ugly, cute. No.
So applies
I
to
guess.
babies. Yes.
Sure.
I've seen many
I've seen many ugly babies.
many ugly babies.
50% are ugly.
I've seen
I
a good
feel.
amount of ugly cute babies. I think he's actually listened to an episode, so I'm not gonna out who this is. But
Well, have you had a baby in the last few years?
no, there hasn't been a baby for a very long time. But
Ah.
this person was an ugly cute baby.
Oh,
And
the
I've seen-
person itself was an ugly cute
was
baby.
an ugly cute baby.
Fascinating.
And then I've seen some cute babies, right? I think that you have cute kids or adorable kids who are just little shits, just adorable, and then you have adorable little shits.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I do feel the need to, I guess, like kind of just like right off the bat say that this, in my opinion, is Taika Waititi's best work.
Yeah, I think so too.
Like I really did enjoy What We Do in the Shadows.
Yeah.
The movie, not the show. I mean, I like the show.
Yeah.
I could not get through where
The rugby one?
no, the something about the Wilder people, the Hunt for the Wilder people.
Okay.
I could not. I tried watching it, and I was like, this is too Kiwi for me.
Yeah.
I forgot he did a soccer one or a rugby one.
I
Sorry,
forget which one it is. Could be soccer.
I can't
That
remember.
would also be very Kiwi.
I love Thor Ragnarok,
Yeah.
but I feel like that just comes built in because I love the MCU overall, especially back in 2017.
It's a different class of movie.
Different class of movie.
Yeah.
But as far as like a wholly original,
Isn't this based off a comic?
it might be, but like it's still like it's such a Taika
enough.
movie.
Yeah.
Like it might be based on it, but I just don't feel like it.
It's full on adaptation.
Yeah.
Like, you wouldn't classify it in your head as a full on adaptation.
Like this to me goes as like this is a Taika movie,
Right.
right? And the fact that you are playing with themes that are so both yes,
Yeah.
but they're timeless themes,
Yeah.
but they're also extremely applicable in the climate.
That we were
I would
in.
say back in 2019, sure, but especially in 2025. Like in the 2020s, I feel like these themes have like even more than anything bared their fangs even more.
Yeah.
Like back in post 2016, I wonder what happened in 2016. I don't know. We'll never know.
The Cubs won the World Series is what happened.
Sure.
Pokemon Go came out. And nothing else.
And people did not Pokemon go to the polls.
No.
I think that like we started to see this resurface, which is why I feel like he made this movie, if I'm being honest.
Oh, absolutely. It's absolutely a product of the first Trump administration.
1000%.
Yeah.
But I feel like even looking back, like just the way things have escalated in the past 4 or 5 years, like it's leagues above where we were.
I think what this movie does best with handling the Nazi-inspired political climate is it chooses to laugh at them.
Yeah.
And it chooses to call them children.
And that's why this works.
And I think that is the winning playbook.
It's the thing about this movie, right? It's
Yeah.
by focusing on Jojo and him being a child, you do paint this dogma and like this is a children's dogma.
Yes.
Like in order for you to fully buy into this, you need to have the brain of a child.
Yeah.
Because as soon as you start to like expose your ideals to like
As soon as you take step one.
as soon as you take step one.
Yeah.
Right? If you're following
Maybe
from
that could be our first heartwarming shirt in our line of merchandise.
all it takes
Just
is
take step one.
Just take step one.
Yeah.
Like as soon as you start to like combat this like idea, it falls apart.
Yeah.
Right? Like his first impression of a Jewish person is not
Where are the fangs?
right?
Yeah.
So let's get into this movie,
Yeah.
right? So it's 2019. This movie's set in the 40s during the world. This is at the end of the war.
Yeah.
Germany's in shambles.
Yes.
They're on their last push, basically here.
And I do love how you get like we know that it's in shambles because of history, but I love how because you're getting it through Jojo's propagandized eyes, like it's not clear to him and his other little Hitler Youth peers
It's peachy.
that they are in shambles, but you can still see little cracks in the well operated Wehrmacht machine.
Yeah. I do think it's a choice to start this movie with Jojo and all the other little Hitlers in like this. I don't even know what to call this. It's like an indoctrination camp almost.
Camp, I think you and I just don't appreciate how big an element of culture camp is and has been and continues to be
I guess
in many sects.
as someone who was never a Boy Scout,
And
I feel like camp never did anything for me.
I never repeatedly went to camp. I had been to camp, and not even the same camp, just like different kinds of camp, like maybe once or twice in my life. But there are a lot of people who like go to camp.
Oh, for sure. I mean, my nephews go to like this weird religious camp.
Yeah.
And they're there like all summer and like they love it. And I'm happy for them. I'm happy that they love it.
Fuck that for me. Once I heard the selling point was you're here for a long ass time, I'm like, no gracias. I'll pass.
Here's the thing. I do truly believe this is a a generational thing where like our culture grew up in like, hey, it's summer, let's go to Six Flags, let's go to the movies, let's hang out with friends,
let's stay home.
Let's stay home.
Yeah.
Right? Or I feel like a lot of the new age kids are like, I don't watch TV anyway. I don't watch movies. What the fuck difference does it make if I go to a camp and just read scripture for 2 months?
I don't know,
man. But anyway, I mean, what I mean by like a choice is like you are allowed to kind of see how these kids have been so programmed to buy into this big lie.
Yeah.
Right? Like, as far as what they're able to see is just what's around them. It's a forest and a bunch of your homies.
Yep.
And hey, guess what? All your homies share your ideas.
It's cool. You're with the boys. You're throwing grenades.
You're throwing grenades. You're talking about how the girls get to like, the boys are going to be taught how to do all this cool shit. And girls, well, we're going to teach you how to make babies. You're like, oh, fuck. Like, immediately this movie starts off on that note, right? Yeah. And I think there's a pretty funny shot of like a girl who just like, you see like the life leave her eyes. So she hears that. Because she's like, I'm here to do cool shit for Monfior. Yeah. And she's like, oh. And I mean, how is that not exactly like our climate right now?
There was. So it's interesting. Here's what you need to hear an opinion on mother. A 31-year-old man. At my last school, because it was a Catholic school, so we had mass. And then there was one time where this priest came who hadn't come before, and I don't think he was invited again. And like he gave a whole homily on how the most beautiful thing about, because it was an all-girls school too, the most beautiful thing about being a girl and being a woman, and the most beautiful thing about their education was that they were going to learn how to be mothers, and how wonderful it was to be a mother, and how they were worthwhile because they could be mothers. And he kind of went on like that for about like 10 minutes. And it was so awkward to watch. And I say this as someone who also fully argues that we need to return to a point where we can have like one stay-at-home parent, because I think it just does very good for the family. I don't necessarily think it needs to be the mother or the father, but like, why do the Chuds have to make it so weird?
Yeah, hear me out. I have nothing against like the stay-at-home parent.
Yeah,
but I think the problem is people who are stay-at-home parents make it weird.
Well, there's this weird trad culture about it.
That's the problem.
Yes.
I do think it's the trad wife.
Where I think they could win us over more easily.
Dude, if they were to tell me, hey, you can stay home.
I know. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, no one's saying like don't be like you said, don't be a stay-at-home
I think
parent.
Some people were saying it. I think
some people were
saying, and I am also not saying that it's not work. It is a lot of work to be a stay-at-home parent.
For sure. Keeping a clean house it's hard.
It is. And I think it's a role that's like very, very necessary. And as like teachers who see the product of like kids who don't have enough supervision in life, like I think we get extra insight as to how necessary it is. But why they gotta make it so weird?
They do. It could, well, because like we're seeing it as like a practical like application of life. Yeah. Like, hey, this is how you can make sure that there's always a parent who's going to be able to go to these meetings, right, at school.
Yeah.
There's a parent who's always at home to make sure that like the kids have their necessary needs be met.
Right.
But then the Chuds see it as a power play.
This is how I am distinct from you.
That, and it's also like holding it against like the other person. Like, I'm supporting you.
Yeah.
You are subservient to me.
Yes.
And that's where I think they make it extra weird.
Yeah.
But anyway, back to the movie.
Right.
So Jojo is un segundo.
Great pause.
Anyway, we were talking about Jojo. Like, so Jojo's our little indoctrinated Nazi boy. He's shown from the very beginning to be very compassionate.
Yeah.
Right, because they're training them to like be killers.
Right.
And there's a scene where they're like, "You gotta be a killer. Are you a killer?" He's like, "Yeah, let's kill people." And they're like, "All right, kill this rabbit." He's like, "Oh no!" Immediately. Which, by the way, the choice of having this Nazi boy kill a rabbit and then just chuck the body of this rabbit like nothing.
So when I was first watching this movie, I was like, I don't get where this rabbit thing's gonna come in, and then it comes in fairly quickly. But yes.
Yeah, I mean it's the nickname because like they call him Jojo. His name is Johannes.
Yeah.
And then the rabbit comes because like he's like a scared little rabbit, right?
Yeah.
But then like he like tries to hype himself up. His best imaginary friend Hitler.
Yeah.
Hypes him up, and he's like, "Let's go throw a grenade." And man, all right, hear me out. I don't think there's ever been a funnier rendition of Hitler
Than Taika. No, definitely not.
It's so good. Because, like, it's coming from a place of, like, disdain of this person.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, it's just a pure mockery.
Which a lot of people were worried when this movie came out, that this movie would be glorifying Hitler and that culture. But it's clearly once you watch this movie for more than 5 minutes.
Here's the thing, too. Happening. I feel like it takes a certain amount of small brain to see a movie this blatantly Nazi.
Yeah.
And be like, no, this is on the up and up for the Nazis.
No.
Like... I think even if you wanted to make a movie that was pro-Nazi,
yeah,
I think you need a little bit more tact than this.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I honestly don't understand why people were concerned.
And I think all of those voices died down once the film.
Oh, immediately.
Once the film came out.
I think once it came out. I think honestly, once the trailers came out, I think people were like, "This is exactly where this is going." Exactly. I feel like if you just even thought about it for a second,
we were a sensitive culture back then.
I guess. So I love the fact that he takes this grenade and he like chucks it and it just like bounces back on him.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, he should be dead.
Yes.
I know they make it a plot point where he's like, I'm disfigured, I'm ugly, I'm hideous, I'm a monster. And you look at him like, you look the same, my man.
I didn't get as much as the ugly vibes. I took that as more of the lesson to him that like this world that he fancies himself as being part of is a very cruel and very adult world.
Yeah.
And just like, a kid who plays too much Call of Duty can think that actually shooting people is all peaches and cream.
Yeah.
Is nowhere near that.
Yeah.
I think that's what I took it less of, more of for JoJo.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that.
Forget his eye is...
His eye is fine. It's just he has a scar across his eye and then like a weird shape across his cheek.
Yes.
I was curious as to like what the passage of time was. My assumption here is that it's during this time span where he's at camp and then he's like bedridden. That's when Rosie takes in Elsa.
Yeah.
But I don't know, because like there's also like some comments that Elsa makes that implies that she's been there for longer or that she's known them for longer. Because she talks about how she's
definitely known them for longer.
Yeah. So I don't know. I also don't know how long Inga's been dead.
Right.
Because like Inga looked older, closer to Elsa's age.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's like a more recent death.
And then Elsa is also later in the movie able to survive by pretending to be.
Yeah. So it's that similar age range.
Right.
So I don't know. I do really love the fact that Rosie is immediately shown to be like someone who just does not take shit from anyone. And I'm like, it's a choice to have this character exist this way in this movie, because I feel like it's in contrast to kind of like what you assume like a little like Nazi mom to behave like.
Well, it opens up a lot of questions for me, because I do wonder how Jojo became this way, given what his environment is like at home. I mean, that opens up a whole door of questions of how you have black sheep of families, right, that come from perfectly good upbringings.
Yeah.
But I love the scenes of them just like walking and talking with her, like holding her bike.
I love how she rips him like all the time.
Yes.
And
but it's never cruel.
It's never cruel. It's from a place of trying to teach him a lesson, quote unquote, I guess you could say. I mean, it does make sense given the culture, right? So like you can have a family member in today's age, right, 2025. You have a family where everybody seems to be pretty well adjusted, pretty,
Yeah.
a nice, happy family. But then you have the one son who's like listening to Andrew Tate,
Yeah.
right? So like that kind of tracks in the sense that like to keep up appearances, you kind of have to send your kid to Nazi camp,
Right.
right? The kid is going to school, and I'm assuming a school that has, Hitler's picture,
Yeah.
like right at the front of the room, right?
There. Right.
So, with children being as impressionable as they are, like
That's where he's getting it from.
This makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
And then you also have the dynamic of like, well, this is mom, right? Like mom is saying that we should be nice to people.
Yeah.
But Grandmaster Führer Hitler says Jews are bad.
Yep.
So like, as a
Who
young
do I
kid,
listen to?
like I'm not gonna listen to my mom. That's not cool.
Right.
Right. So it's that, I think it's that dynamic that comes into play here.
I'm not going to listen to my mom, but still very much influenced by his mom.
Yeah.
And willing to listen to mom deep.
It's
deep
that
down.
it's that idea of like even though the kid might want to say he doesn't want to listen to his mom,
Yeah.
like deep down, like it's your mom at the end of the day. Like
Exactly.
you love her and you trust your mom, right?
Yeah.
The whole thing with then Jojo getting injured is like it takes him out of that camp, which allows him to spend time at home, which is where he encounters Elsa for the first time. My question here is, was Elsa reaching out, or was this like purely accidental? Because like she knows that he's not in this Nazi camp anymore. I'm
Right.
assuming Rosie tells her like, hey, he's in camp, but like it almost feels, I don't want to say careless on her end, or if it's just one of those things like where she's just like so desperately lonely that like she slips up.
You know how... Have you ever broken an arm?
No.
I have not.
I've broken a pinky.
But you know how, like, if you see in movies, or if you know people who've broken their dominant hand, and then, like, they try to do stuff. Or here's one. You know how when you, like, wake up in the morning and, like, you slept on your neck wrong?
Yeah.
And then everything in your day is much harder? I think it's one of those things, like, I think it's easy to just take for granted how much noise we make and how comfortable we are going out in public, like, throughout the day. That when you're confined to a hiding space, that makes it difficult. It's very difficult to keep that going on for long term.
Yeah.
I mean, you could get away with shooting a CEO in New York
For a while.
for only so long. I never took it as anything more than accidental, but I love the scene and how it's initially played off as
It's
like a horror scene.
It's a horror scene.
Yeah.
I was watching it last night and I was like, this
Scary?
could be seen as like a very scary scene from the boy's perspective.
This is scarier than the Willy Wonka tunnel, which I will contend I
It's not
never
scary.
found that scary.
I never found it scary at all.
Yeah, just loud.
Just like that scene, I think that's one of the things that you get from the perspective of the boy, right?
Yeah,
Where this scene can be played as scary. She comes up to him, she like threatens him with his own knife.
right.
And she's basically like, if you tell anyone about me, I will cut your little Nazi head off.
I love the dynamic between these two actors. I love how much taller Thomasin McKenzie is than him. I think her build and her voice make her so intimidating for Jojo, while also for the audience, us being like, this is just a girl.
This is just
a girl. This is just
because her voice is also like,
yeah.
I've noticed that about her in every movie she's in. Her voice is kind of cheapish.
Yeah,
And I don't know.
but she uses it so well.
She uses it so well because she like whispers it to him and like it makes her threatening.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Like I think I love the fact that she's so willing immediately to like, I don't want to say push her luck, but like immediately she's like, I'm gonna fuck with this kid.
Yeah.
And I don't know if like that's her way of like, this is my only choice to possibly not get out of this, like fuck with this boy.
But then also, how do little sisters like behave with their little brothers? Like,
I guess, but like,
I think it's both. I think this is both like big sister instinct, and this is her survival mechanism, and she's also a teenager, so naturally she's really bored up there.
I mean, it's also the 40s. What the fuck are you doing other than this?
Yeah, man.
You go to war or you're in the room.
You can only read so many. You can only read that one chapter from Anne Frank so many times.
Oh, fuck. Immediately she starts like dispelling these like severely anti-Semitic accusations of like Jewish people.
Yeah. Well, she
Right.
does play with him. Like he's writing his book.
He's writing his
And
book.
she does humor him.
You Jew. Where like his plan is like, I'm gonna write an expose on the Jews now that I have. This is the equivalent of Hiccup writing his Little Dragon journal, right?
Yes.
About the secrets of dragons.
Hiccup actually had the empirical data.
Yeah.
Jojo thought he had the
Jojo
empirical
thought,
data.
which is also kind of funny because like one of the things that they quote unquote teach him about Jewish people is that like they're sneaky, they are conniving, like they are tricksters, right? And he just falls for it immediately.
Yeah.
Right? He writes his books about like, what does she say to him? He's like, oh, we're allergic to bread and meat and hard foods.
Right.
And he's like, well, I know you're joking. He's like, oh, you're right. Well, your mom did give me bread. So like she starts breaking down these walls through this like overly exaggerated like stereotypes of Jewish people, right? And he starts to kind of realize, yeah, this is all bullshit.
Yeah.
Like, and he fights this so hard for so long, though.
Yeah.
I kind of wish we had a better understanding of the passage of time. I don't know how to interpret this necessarily because at the beginning of the movie, he very clearly says like he's a 10-year-old boy.
Right.
But then by the end of the movie, he says he's a 10-and-a-half-year-old boy. So I don't know if that's meant to signify to us it's been like 6 months. And time does pass a lot at the end of this movie.
Yeah.
So we'll get to that in a bit. But I do think like just that having those interactions with Elsa really opened his eyes, I think, like
as to what being Jewish actually is.
As to that,
as definitely to, like, as to what it's not.
As to what it is, what it's not. Also, as to what he's being told versus what is actually reality.
Yeah.
So, like he starts to see through the veil of like the big lie that is being spread through the propaganda, right?
And it's cool that as he's gaining this real friend, he's losing his imaginary friend.
Yeah.
So he's able to step more into reality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I do love how for starters, Taika Waititi as Adolf Hitler is already very unhinged. Like just some of the way, because like I mean, this is Hitler through the lenses of a child, right? So it's all very exaggerated. I love the one too. He's like, oh, well, like I can't stay because I gotta go home and have unicorn for dinner. This is like what a dumb little kid would think like a famous person would be eating. Right? So it's all, none of it is played in any remote way realistically. Every single interaction that he has with this imaginary Hitler is painted as this is pure brain rot.
Pure whimsy, right?
Pure whimsy, yeah. And slowly, he just becomes more unhinged because he's losing that.
Yeah, he eventually develops into that meme from that one movie.
He goes off on this massive rant towards the end of the movie.
Right.
Where he's just like giving a very heated Hitlerian-ass speech.
Yeah.
But it's still goofy.
Well, because he was naturally goofy.
Yeah.
I mean, just like, here, I don't want to bop it too much on the nose, but like, Trump is goofy.
Trump is goofy.
Right. He's fucked, but he's also like,
listen,
funny.
Man,
it's funny to watch.
I will never not laugh at that man dancing to YMCA like a fucking goober.
I was doing it on New Year's Eve. It's a funny dance.
It's an inherently funny dance. But the thing that I'm also wondering, as someone who is not a white boy, so I never went through my...
Bobby's going to get the empirical data from me now.
I guess I am, but even then, I don't know if you ever had this. Like, there is a phenomenon with a subculture of whites where they get super into World War II. Yep, and then there's a crowd that takes it even further where they will, like, unironically, but they will actually read, like, Mein Kampf and they will listen to Hitler's speeches.
Yeah.
Like, we recently discussed a classmate who used to, like, check shit out like that in the library. And I'm like, is his speech here, his ramblings, some of the words he says, like, they sound too mature for what a boy would imagine.
Right.
So I'm like, is this part of an actual Hitler speech that he's like repurposing for a child?
Yeah.
Because that would be really funny to have him devolve into this like insanity, but still using actual Hitler words.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I'm very curious as to if that was something that like, but it's definitely that vibe though. It's the vibe of like those insane unhinged speeches where he's like almost falling over himself on that podium.
Yeah.
Because like I've seen historical videos like
dude
on the
talking.
History Channel.
Yeah.
And dude, he is like toppling over himself. Like he's so animated.
Yeah.
And that's what that scene reminds me of.
Yes, I think by the time you get to that ending scene, I do think you're seeing the closest to the real Hitler than you saw in the movie.
Mhm.
But that's also when he's the most scary for us, the audience, and for Jojo.
For Jojo.
Yeah, no, the white boys going through the World War II phase is a fact.
Yeah. I love the little interactions that Jojo still has with his little Nazi crowd, right? Like I can't remember loving Sam Rockwell in a role more than this.
Yeah.
Like he's good in a lot of the movies. I love him as Justin Hammer in the Marvel movies. I really did actually like him in that 3 Billboards movie.
I never saw 3 Billboards.
It's a very mid movie, but he's really good in it.
I liked him as George W. Bush.
Yeah.
I love his character here because he just seems I have such a sympathy for him. Because for most of this movie, he's just kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah.
He's a career military man. He knows this is
a losing battle.
Yes.
And
he knows he's the baddies.
He knows he's the bad guys.
Yeah.
That's the thing about him. He has this because there's a bit of a dual role happening here with him, where part of him is also upset that he's not, because he makes comments about not being in the front lines. Mm-hmm. He makes comments about I'm stuck here training these kids. And then when Jojo gets blown up, he gets demoted to now I'm over here spreading propaganda and shit.
Yeah.
So and I can't tell if it's supposed to be played as darn,
right,
or if he actually is upset about this.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because then that leads to we're learning more and more about Rosie, who is Jojo's mom.
Right.
That she's not leading, but she's part of the resistance. She is spreading anti-German propaganda.
Mm-hmm.
She's for fuck's sake, she's harboring a Jewish girl in her attic, right? So you have that happen, and it eventually leads to them getting visited by the Gestapo.
Yep.
Or the Gazpacho, as Marjorie Titan Green would say.
I love the scenes where each one of them has to say Heil Hitler on the way in and on the way out.
On the way out, they only say it once. They all say it collectively. They say Heil Hitler, and they all say Heil Hitler together.
Maybe so. They say it twice once another person enters the room.
But when they enter the room, every single person has to say it to the person, and they repeat it, and it goes on.
Yeah, for about 2.5 minutes.
Man, but here's the thing about that scene, though. You know how sometimes you have a scene where you're like, I get the joke. Could we please stop?
But this
I don't think this ever felt not funny.
No,
because it's so goofy.
They're so procedural.
Yeah. But also this scene, even though it has that really funny undertone, it's also extremely scary.
Yeah.
Because you have the visual of this guy, played by Stephen Merchant.
Yep. Who looks like a Gestapo.
He does. But he's also massive.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is actually his height. I know he's tall.
Right.
I know Stephen Merchant's tall.
But he's actually this tall in comparison to.
But he towers over every single person.
Yeah.
And when he's towering over Jojo, you're he's a child.
Right.
Even when he towers over Elsa, you're she's just a child too, technically.
The camera uses some good low shots.
But also he towers over Sam Rockwell's character.
Yeah.
And it shows that even he is kind of afraid of them.
Yeah.
These are the baddies of the baddies, right?
Yep.
These were the ones that were sent out.
These are the ones who actually believe what they're doing and have the power to enact.
Yeah, there's always that conversation to be had when you're how many of you actually bought into this lifestyle and how many of you were doing it because you just didn't want to get killed.
Exactly.
Where I feel you have a character like Sam Rockwell who feels like that second option where you're this is kind of what it is and I don't want to die.
Yeah.
But then you have people like Rebel Wilson who kind of does feel a little goofier, a little bit more of a caricature. So yeah, there's that dynamic in there as well too. But kind of going back to like the whole point of that scene is like he catches Elsa in the lie where she's pretending to be Inga.
Right.
And I do wonder what the plan is. If her plan is fuck the Gestapo are here, they're very thorough. They will find this if they are allowed to search indefinitely. Because Jojo finds it because there's scuff marks on the floorboards, right? But I mean, like with her coming out of the room, like it immediately kind of like lets you overlook a little bit more of that.
Yeah.
Like you're not going to be harboring someone if you're in your room right now, right?
Exactly.
That's kind of that idea.
It's kind of like the best defense is a good offense.
Kind of, yeah. But immediately that paints a target on her because then that leads to the questioning.
Correct.
Right? And she gets the birthday wrong.
Yeah.
And Sam Rockwell does not rat her out.
Exactly.
And that's why I'm like,
this is when you learn that Sam Rockwell is cool for sure, right?
You learn that he's cool for sure, but you're also kind of like, is he cool in the sense of like he doesn't buy into the bullshit, so that makes him kind of better than the other Nazis? Or is he also like with Rosie part of the resistance? But I don't know.
Yeah, I do.
Because even in the final battle, he's in the final battle.
Right.
Like still siding with the Germans.
On Cool Team.
Huh?
I thought in the final battle that he ends up siding with the Allies.
Yeah. No, because he gets captured. He gets captured by the Americans and killed.
Yeah.
Because he's dressed like a fucking Nazi with his goofy feather, his cape.
Yeah.
Theon Greyjoy is there with his like massive horn.
Yeah.
I love their like weird like homoerotic dynamic with the two of them.
Yes.
There's a scene early on where they like look at each other, like they look like they're about to kiss, and then they both awkwardly turn away.
no place for that.
No place for that here. But yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. Like it's because of the scene then that like the following scene after this is where Jojo's walking down the street and like he sees the butterfly. He sees the propagandist falling. So that again is like signifying that this is leading to the end of the war. Like even the propaganda posters are no longer sticking. Like shit's just crumbling.
Right.
He sees the butterfly that leads him to the stocks. And
you see the red shoes.
And
then he hugs the red shoes.
Dude.
Yeah.
Bad times.
It's so sad.
And
then you get the scenes of like the houses watching.
Yeah.
The shots of the houses watching. Excuse me.
Fucking crazy.
Right.
The whole thing with rewatching this movie is like you know where this is going. And like the initial watch, I know it's been a while since like I first watched this movie. Like it's shocking, it's a gut punch, it's sad, but I think this time was worse.
Yeah, so what do you think makes it? I have my own little snippets of why I think I agree with you that it's worse. What do you think makes it worse for you?
I think it's the fact that like the first time you're watching it, you're like, oh, this butterfly is leading him. And like usually butterflies in movies signify like a hope. Right. But in this case, like you're watching it like, no, this butterfly is leading him to like utter despair.
Yeah.
And it's that like the whole chasing of the butterfly, it's that anticipation. You're like, you know where this is going. And you're like, please don't.
Right.
Like just don't chase it.
Right.
And I think that's what made it worse for me.
Yeah, so for me, I don't know, it's a loss. It's not just like a loss of innocence, but it's this idea that, you know, actions have consequences.
Mm-hmm.
And like whenever those consequences hit home and whenever those chickens hit home to roost, even if it's not, I'm not saying he deserved to lose his mom, obviously, but like, you know, even when you're seeing a character who like comes face to face with the results of like what their ideology would lead to, I don't know, man, that just always makes it very hard to watch.
For sure. I do think as much as I would love for this movie to have a true happy ending where, you know, he gets to leave Germany with both Elsa and Rosie.
His mom, yeah.
I feel like this is a necessary step for that illusion to fully break for him.
Well, and then I also think that it makes the ending scene even more powerful because like they're still able to find that joy that they do find amidst the tragedy that Jojo just experienced. I do think it's very necessary. We didn't talk about the scene earlier where they're at the dinner table, and then at this point, like, Jojo's already known Elsa's there, and like he's noticing his mom isn't eating her dinner. She's like, I'm not hungry. And later,
Well, I'm
like,
super hungry. So
yeah.
what if I want to
Yes.
eat yours?
And then this is also the scene where like where his mom pretends, like, plays being his dad, right?
Yeah. Okay. So I did want to kind of double back before we moved on.
Yeah.
To say, and I can say this because I know Katie will not listen to this episode of the podcast.
Yeah.
I cannot explain to you the things that Scarlett Johansson's voice with this little German accent does to my body.
Wow.
Dude,
Wow.
I don't know. I can't explain it.
You're in it. Yeah.
Fuck, dude. Dude, she sounds so hot.
She does.
She sounds so hot.
And typically I do not think of the German accent as hot, but she does.
No, but but hers is not necessarily like a German accent. It's not like a heavy, thick German accent.
No.
But it's whatever she's doing, and that works for me. Hey man, dude, Rosie's a hot mom.
I was about to talk about how heartwarming it is to see this woman stressed out, having to be both mom and dad.
Is Rosie the hottest mom in
cinema history? I don't know.
Because she is like, that's the thing. Like, she is, yes. Joking aside, yes, mom is very hot. Joking aside, right? But all actual jokes aside, like, you're right. Like, she is no nonsense. She wants to leave this world a better place for her son, and also, for her now, I guess, adoptive daughter.
Right.
And she does say that she's like, I didn't get to see my daughter grow into a woman, but I guess I get to watch you now, right? Which then is also like adds to the sadness of the fact that even though she did save Elsa, she still doesn't get to grow.
Watch her see her grow up. Yeah.
Not because Elsa is gone, but because now she's the one that's gone.
Exactly.
But yeah, go on. Tell me what else. Tell me how Scarlett Johansson made you feel in your loins.
Well, I do like the fact that this comes off the tail end of her role in the Marvel movies.
Yeah, you're right.
You kind of get to see her in a much more, not that she hadn't done mature work before, but you kind of get to see her channel all her talents of being very approachable, lighthearted, playful, commanding authority, having some sex appeal, as some will randomly interject.
Hey man,
but no, she's a really, really good presence in this movie
for sure.
And I don't know who I would have even, like, if I had to like recast her. I don't even know where I would begin.
That's the thing,
to fill these shoes. These red shoes.
These red and white shoes. Yeah. That's kind of the thing about her is that, like, if you told me, like, hey, we making this movie, who do you think is playing the mom? I would never have guessed Scarlett Johansson. Yeah. But, like, to your point, now that it is Scarlett Johansson, you can't
picture anybody else.
I could picture somebody else playing the little boy role.
Yeah.
I could maybe even picture somebody else playing Elsa's role.
Right.
I can't divorce that role from her.
And kind of how appropriate that she's glue that holds this movie together, given this movie's the themes it has about motherhood, but then also like the fact that like Jojo's distraction from what is reality is just so distorted in the wrong direction. And really, like, I think this movie would argue that his real self is not his Nazi self. His real self is the one that he's been raised to by his mother.
Yeah,
right?
the one that's caring and
I think you really need an actress with gravitas to really like be able to act out that unsung, that not unsung, but like initially, like you would initially miss how important the mother is in his life, right? Mm-hmm. And she's able to play that role so well of like being irreplaceable, but then also being subtle.
And here's the thing, I also feel like the reason why her character stands out so much is because she's able to have all of those like dimensions at the same time. Like, she can be very feisty,
right?
She can be kind of sultry. She can be very vulnerable.
She has to be the teacher, right?
She has to be, yeah.
She has to be the mother
and
the father.
Serious. Yeah. She has to be hilarious, and all of that just like all together just makes a really standout character.
Absolutely,
in a movie with arguably very standout characters.
Yeah,
she's just like head and shoulders above.
I don't think I realized until this time that this is really Scarlett Johansson's movie for me. Right.
It's so good. And the fact that she's gone for like the last
half
of the movie.
Yeah.
Like I think it's like she's gone for like the last 40 minutes of the movie.
It's a long time.
It's a long time.
Yeah.
This so after Jojo has this like realization, like fuck, that's my mom, like and Huck, and ooh, you know what the biggest gut punch is when he tries to tie the shoes.
Yeah.
The feels.
Yeah.
He goes home and like in his like anger stabs Elsa.
Yes.
And she knows like what happened.
Yeah.
Like there's no conversation, but she just knows and she lets it happen. Like she lets him. It's not like a wholehearted like stab.
No, it's
like,
whatever a little boy can do. Yeah.
I don't even think it's whatever a little boy can do. I think it's just like he's just so
torn.
He's so torn. Like he doesn't like he feels like this is what he's supposed to do to release the anger, but even that he can't do
competently.
Not even comment. Like I just don't feel like he has it in him to actually go through with stabbing someone. I think he's just going through the motions of like, this is what my doctrine has
tells me to do,
told me to do, but I can't even will myself in anger to do it.
Yeah.
So like he just like pokes her, and she fucking just does not react.
Right.
Which I think is a great choice.
Absolutely.
To not have her say a single word and just immediately know.
Well, it's a foil to his Nazi ideology, right? It's strength through peace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then so after this is like where the two of them have to figure out like, well, what are we gonna do? Because it's after the scene that we see they're both in the attic looking out over the city, and the city is being raided. They're being invaded. They're being attacked from both sides, the Russians on one side and the Americans on the other. Later on, we have that scene with Yorkie, and he's like, Jojo, it's bad. We have Russians on one side, Americans on the other. Jews are not our worst problem. Russians are ugly, and they bang our dogs. And it's kind of one of those things where you're like, it, not contrast, but like it parallels so well with like, especially our 2024, 2025 political climate. Where you're like, they're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats.
Yeah.
And it's that like level of like childish 5 to 10-year-old insult. What's the worst thing a person could do?
Living in total fantasy.
It's
very Orwellian in the sense that he like snaps from like one mortal worst enemy to another without any sort of critical thinking. Right? And I think back to the whole structure of this movie of putting that mindset through children not only just shows you how silly that mindset is, but also just makes the movie so much more palpable and watchable, because you just can't help it.
It's so so funny. Every time that Yorkie comes up with like the goofiest thing that like a person does, describe like, oh, I heard that they're doing this, or I heard that like he talks about like his uniform. He's like, oh, they said it's not paper, but it's paper like. He's like, but you know, whatever, they just gave me a gun.
Right.
Like he just says everything so matter of fact, so childishly matter of fact. I don't know, his delivery
is perfect.
Yeah. I can't remember if this is the same kid who was in the new Home Alone movie.
Oh, I don't know.
But I hope to God it's not, because I can't imagine. It honestly might be fucking Archie Yates. It honestly might be, but that movie, it is. Son of a bitch, that movie's awful.
Archie Yates looks like a younger version of a British actor that I can't think of.
Nick Frost.
Yeah.
He is Nick Frost
as a baby.
Shrunken down.
He could also be the little boy from Up.
He's not Asian? Are you whitewashing the little Asian boy from Up?
I did not realize the little boy from Up was Asian.
He's Asian?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, there you go.
But yeah, this is where, kind of going back to the whole thing with like them watching over the city, like the allies are now invading. Jojo hides throughout the fighting, and then this is where Jojo's going out. This is not where he's collecting metal. He's not at this point, right?
I don't think so.
Yeah. I think he's just walking the town. Yeah. And this is where like the big invasion finally happens. He sees that like people are getting torn up, and he runs into Sam Rockwell. He runs into Rebel Wilson. They're doing their whole like, here, give the weapons to whatever warm body we can. Right. I'm pretty sure she grabs a boy. And she's like, "Here, go give that American a big hug." And pulls the pin and has him run like fucking hell.
Yeah.
You see like all the joke earlier from the German Shepherds where he's like, "Yeah, you told me you wanted German Shepherds. Yeah, I wanted dogs, not actual shepherds." Which then during the scene, you actually see the shepherds all take up arms and also fighting, and then she gets blown the fuck up, and this is when George is like, "Fuck, I need to go hide."
Yorkie has the bazooka, right?
Georgie, yeah, that's what it is. So he's walking, and he sees Jojo. He goes, "Hi, Jojo." Yeah. He drops the rocket launcher and just shoots a rocket into a building, and it just kind of like it's meant to represent like just how inept at the end of the day like the German army is outside of like just their stronghold through fear. Right, like yes, they were a formidable army, but it was primarily based on the fact that like they had such a grip on like their people through the fear of like, well, if you don't tell us where all these Jews are, we're gonna kill you too, right?
How that ruling through fear only has an expiration date.
Yeah. And then once you take that fear away, it's just all incompetence.
Exactly.
And this is where he's like, yeah, well, now that Hitler is dead, and Jojo's like kind of worldview just finally just shatters. He's like, what do you mean? He's like, yeah, he blew his brains out because things were going his way, and apparently he kept a lot of secrets from us. Again, it's just the way he's just like so matter-of-factly
got all his delivery.
Yeah, it's great. But going back to Sam Rockwell's character, because he gets captured in the scene, Jojo gets captured too, and he's also going to be put in this like execution block, right? And the captain apologizes to him. He's like, "I'm really sorry about your mom. Like, she was a good woman. She like really cared. Like, it sucks that it happened, and you know, like I wish I could have done something." And so that's why I'm not. I know that it wasn't him who ratted them out.
No,
but I do feel like this is like that was definitely like our first indication, like it was inevitable
that she would
end up getting found out.
Yeah. Yes.
But this scene also then humanizes him quite a bit, because he's like he takes off his jacket, because Rebel Wilson gave him a German like commander jacket, like to put him in charge. And he takes it off and he's like, "Get out of here, Jew!" Like kind of like, you know, making him not a target anymore. Right. So like it's this willing of like not going like down with the ship. All of us go down with the ship, which is when then the ally soldier like is like, "Get the fuck out of here, go home."
Yeah.
It's a choice though to make Jojo then tell Elsa that the Germans won.
Yeah.
And it comes from like that childish desire to like not want to lose.
His worldview is shattered, but he hasn't fully filled his arc yet.
He still has that selfishness.
He still wants to be able to control things. And that comes from fear, right?
Yeah.
That comes from fear of being totally alone, right? From losing, you know, all mother figures and sister figures that he would have had. Right?
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point you could make the argument that the captain is almost like a father figure to him too.
Exactly.
Right. So losing all family at this point, he doesn't want to lose Elsa. He tells her like, "Nope, Germany won the war," and like she is torn up about it.
Absolutely.
Which then he makes another. The Nathan letters are so fucking funny.
Yes.
And you know, kudos for Elsa for like not immediately shutting him down.
Yeah.
With those letters by telling him,
because that's hard for her.
It's gotta be hard because the whole time she says like, "Oh, Nathan's my fiance," and he's writing these like childishly shitty letters. Right. These are like insults that a kid would find, you know, offensive,
really witty and funny and smart. Yeah.
But also mean, because he's being mean to her through these letters.
Exactly.
Right. And it's not until this scene that she reveals that like Nathan is actually dead.
Yeah.
And his reaction is really funny because she's like, "Yeah, you know, he died last year of tuberculosis." And he goes, "Oh, well, who wrote these then?" Because like even in this getting caught in this lie, he doesn't like, "I'm sorry, it was actually me."
Right, which is what kids do.
It is what kids do. And now like this is what he liked to like I'm doing this like I love you, and she liked to like, "Oh, I love you too," which is really sweet. And this is where we get this final confrontation between him and Hitler. This is where he finally like fully just leaves this behind him, and it's so cathartic.
Yes.
to just hear Jojo finally say "fuck you, Hitler."
Yeah, you get to see him
Literally kick him out the window.
get yeeted off screen. Those were the words I was looking for.
Yeet it off screen. Yeah. How do you think Jojo sees this quote unquote master escape plan going? Because like he got to know that immediately the ruse is up.
I think I'm trying to put myself into my little kid's shoes of when I would try to try my own versions of those master escape plans. And I think deep down, I knew that they wouldn't work. But that was under many layers of my own self-delusion. So I would imagine that Jojo might feel similarly. And I think it also has to do with the fact that it kind of goes back to conversation earlier on how the real Jojo is not Nazi Jojo. The real Jojo in this movie is the Jojo his mom wants him to be. I think that's part of him peeling away the layers of his immature fantasy and sort of coming into himself. I don't want to say becoming a man yet, because I think he still exits this movie as a child. Yes, I think deep down he knows that it's a ruse, but part of growing up is peeling some of those like layers of self-deception away.
And this is kind of where I'm a little torn. Like, I get you wanting to put this movie through the lens of a kid, but then part of me also goes, it's 10 years old, too old for such childish plots from him. These feel like the schemes of like a 5-year-old.
They could be.
And so then I'm wondering if then the play here is, well, yes, he's 10, but considering all that's happening to him, he's even more infantilized than normal. He's like more stunted in his emotional
that could
maturity.
I think there's always in art, I think there's always something symbolic as the number 10 as an age. Like Ash is perpetually 10, Bart Simpson is perpetually 10. And I think the age functions more of it functions more of a symbol as like the cusp between childhood and adulthood, while still being a good amount on the childhood side. I think here the age is just the number to symbolize like he's getting ready to go through that period of growth in his life.
I kind of almost feel like this movie would like, and it's not a make it or break it, but I think it almost could benefit from leaving his age more ambiguous.
It could.
No. I think it also like it wants them to then have that parallel for Elsa of like having like a set age dynamic between the two of them.
Yeah.
Because Elsa's also played, she's supposed to be 17 in the movie, which then if her fiance's been dead for a year, my girl, that's too young to be. But then again, like it's also
different
the 40s,
different times. Different times, different places.
Having the movie end with the two of them dancing together in the streets,
I love it.
It's really sweet, because that's what the mom says, right? Like, what are you gonna do after the war ends? And she says, dance. And he says, like, that's stupid.
Yeah.
And she goes, well, you're stupid. He goes, why dance? Because like I can, because like I'm free to do so. Like people dance because they're free.
And it's a scene that does not overstay its welcome.
No, they never full on break into dance.
Yeah.
I think they just sway side to side. There's no like loud music playing in the streets.
Yeah. It's very cute.
It's very cute. It's very symbolically sweet.
Yep.
It again harkens back to like Rosie's overall like sacrifice that she did. Now, because of that, she gets to dance.
Exactly.
Man, both of these movies, S-tier movies.
S-tier indeed.
S-tier movies.
S-tier indeed.
And on that S-tier note, fellow listeners, thank you so much for humoring us with our series called Rex I Love.
Indulgence. Over good things.
Boy or boy, our next two movies going to be drastically different.
Yes, drastically different from each other, and then also drastically different. Well, different from this.
I'm going to have to dig deep to find a connection between those two movies.
Yeah,
because we found a very blatant connection in these two movies. I have a connection for our third row of our third tier.
Different than the one we talked about?
Huh?
Different than the one we talked about?
This the both being super long?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
There is an actual like in-world connection.
I'm excited.
Kind of, yeah. Excited. So we'll talk about that briefly. But anyway, our next two movies that we will be discussing are going to be Thanos Recommended Mass, which is a 2021. I have not seen it. I know the basic premise.
Yeah.
And
which is a shame. That's the thing.
The plot point has been spoiled.
Yeah.
The plot twist has been spoiled for me.
Yeah.
I believe you spoiled it to me.
Maybe because
I'm 90% sure
maybe
you
because I
spoiled
thought
it.
you were just never gonna watch it.
Probably.
Yeah.
Well, joke's on you.
There we go.
And then I recommended Dragon Ball Super Broly, and it's going to be just an hour and 20 minutes of people yelling and beating the shit out of each other.
I'm excited.
You know, I was rewatching like clips over the other
We
day.
need more yelling in our life.
Dude, that movie fucking rips when it comes to like action.
Yeah.
So very drastically different movies. Well, everybody, thank you so much for listening. We will be back very soon. Until next time, he has been Thano.
He has been Javier.
And this has been Rex I Love, presented by the Cinescoots Movie Show.
Bye.